So recently I've been learning about the fall of the empire. So it started in 14 BC, and so from 14 BC to 96 AD, sorry, 1480 to 96 AD came the first emperors. So after Augustus, power became hereditary, which meant that if your parents were emperors, then you could become an emperor too. They were prideful and power hungry. They always wanted more land, and they were very arrogant. And Nero was one of the most prominent. He persecuted Christians very strongly, and some people even say that he burned down Rome just to make space for his temple while he played his harp. No, he played his instrument. And he blamed it on the Christians. So Nero was a quite powerful and evil king. So after this period, from 96 to 180 AD, came the height of the empire. A number of good emperors expanded the empire and connected it with roads. And they were paved roads, so they were the best roads at that time. Even now, people say that if you wanted to slide a knife through the stones, it'll be really hard because of how good the roads are. That's where the saying "all roads lead to Rome" came from, because at that time they intended that all of the roads actually literally lead to Rome. So it was kind of like Rome was the central piece, and all other roads like branched out from it. So that's why people say all roads lead to Rome. It's quite literal. It was quite literal at that time. They built the Pantheon, which means all gods in Latin, in honor of all their gods, and the empire, who was thought to have divine powers. So, which meant that at that time, emperors were thought to be like a god. Marcus Aurelius was the last good emperor, and he wrote the book of philosophic teachings called Meditations. So he was a very good general too. He fought many armies for Rome and won over a lot of territory, and he liked to meditate and write his philosophic teachings. But from 180 to 305 AD came the crisis of the empire. So Emperor Commodus, who was Marcus Aurelius' son, brought the empire to an end. At that time, many random emperors, like really random, there could become emperor. There were even soldiers, there were shepherds, and there was even a case when it was bought at the market. It was bought for auction. And after that, there was an emperor called Emperor Caracalla. This Emperor Caracalla gave free Roman citizenship to all the land they conquered, which meant that the politics were also very messed up because the people weren't really Romans, they were just Roman citizens in name. So people from Judea to Africa, basically all the territory, could be Roman citizens. Actually, this is one of their main legacies. So from 284 to 305 AD, so about the same time, came the end of Rome. So at that time, the empire split into four. So a guy called Diocletian and Maximin. So Diocletian was the main guy, and Maximin was kind of like his assistant. They were generals who decided to split the empire into four capital cities, along with two other people called Galerius and Constantius Chlorus. The Senate was powerless, and officials ruled, and they would report to the Roman Empire. The emperor was called Dominicus, which was generally what slaves called their masters. So they were kind of comparing all their citizens to slaves and comparing themselves to slave masters. At that time, the free citizenship for all was also revoked, so you couldn't have free citizenship all the time. From 305 to 475 AD came the actual end of the empire. So when Diocletian died after 20 years, the co-rulers started to fight. So Galerius, Constantius Chlorus, and Maximin. They started to fight amongst themselves. And meanwhile, Constantius' son,
君士坦丁堡。
Constantine, took over the eastern part of the empire, while the west was ruled by two separate emperors. So at that time, so in 330 AD, the capital of the West Empire, which was ruled by two different emperors, was moved to Rome, while the capital of the East was moved to Byzantine, which was later changed to Constantinople in honor of Constantine, the emperor. So the East and the West would trade. They would send soldiers to each other during attacks, and they used each other's coins. So in 395 AD, Theodosius I briefly united the empire, but it was split again right after his death. So basically, it did nothing. In 395 AD, after that, his sons officially split the empire into East and West. The East would survive for another 1,000 years, while the West would fall. So the last official ruler of Rome was called Romulus Augustus. So about the empire, the Emperor Constantine, he was a very good ruler. He had a very big impact on Christianity, because at the Battle of the Million Bridge, or a battle he was at, he was losing, but he saw, but according to legend, he saw a cross in the sky, and it told him to bear this mark to succeed. So he carved crosses into the soldiers' shields, and later he won the army. So he became a Christian. He also made many military reforms, and because he was the emperor and he was a Christian, it helped spread Christianity a lot. And he was also the person who named Byzantine into Constantinople. So he named the capital after himself. So there were many causes of the fall of the empire, like political, social, economic, and military. The political reasons were mainly that the empire was too large for only one emperor to control, so they had to split it. And emperors after the Pax Romana were weak, so because they were very used to peace, so they weren't as good as Augustus or even Julius. And the moving of the capital to Byzantium had also confused them, and they didn't like it a lot. So that was one of the political reasons. So from the social, in the social category, there's like loss of loyalty, confidence, and patriotism. And there was high contrast between the rich and poor. Like the rich had very luxurious lives, while the poor were like starving. Another reason was that they were confused because Constantine became a Christian. Because prior to Constantine becoming a Christian, Rome had many gods and goddesses, but when he became a Christian, the empire was very confused, because they thought like, oh, the emperor says that everything they've worshipped in the past few years is not true, so they were very divided. In the economic category, there was that outside groups disrupted trade, so they might have attacked the traders, or they might have like disrupted it some way or another. And there were poor harvests, which led to food shortages, and people were starving. There was inflation, which meant that the money was being produced so much that it lost its value.
通货膨胀。
And heavy taxes, because the empire also needed a lot of money to pay for all its expenses. In the military category, there were the facts that Germanic tribes, so tribes from Germany, were gaining strength, and Romans hired mercenaries who were foreign soldiers that they conquered. The problem was they weren't very loyal and sometimes betrayed Rome. They had low funds for the soldiers, so they couldn't hire very strong soldiers. The other internal causes were that like Asian and Germanic tribes attacked both sides of Rome, of the empire. They were Huns, Vandals, and Visigoths. And Vandals is where we get the term vandalism, because they like to destroy everything. So later the West broke into smaller kingdoms that were ruled by Germanic tribes, and the East survived for another 1,000 years, but the empire was like not what it was before. And that was the end of the Roman Empire.